Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, on many occasions here in our podcasts, we have commented on the increasing onslaught on democracy, where in Europe. I mean, we saw it, of course, in the United States, where for about a year, the Democrats went out of their way to try to prevent Donald Trump from running for the presidency. But we get a lot of this now in Europe. I mean, we've talked extensively about what happened in Romania, where on the brink of a presidential election, which was clearly going to be won by the nationalist populist Georgescu, the Supreme Court stepped in and canceled the election, and then tried to come up with some reason for doing so, and came up with ludicrous stories about TikTok and Russia.
Yeah, but all at the behest of Brussels.
Of course, all of the best, and at that time, the Biden administration, which was very actively involved in that. And we saw in Moldavia the outright theft of an election. We talked, we did a number of podcasts about the total theft. I mean, it was just theft in plain sight, with hundreds of thousands of Moldavian expatriates living in Russia prevented from voting. Now we have the governor of Gagauzia, this province of Moldova, very strongly opposed to the Chisinau's regime's attempts to get into the EU. Gagauzia had a referendum 2015, I think, in which they said outright, we don't want to be a part of the EU. And so now the governor is under arrest. Again, some
and everyone
story.
The same governor that is photogenic, very charismatic. My goodness. I mean, Brussels, where's our person like that? You guys we always end up with these cookie cutters. Okay, and look at these guys. This woman she's a magnet for attention.
Right.
She's very, very smart, very, very articulate. But no, they just like one phone call. Boom, you're done. Telephone justice here. That phrase came from the Soviet Union.
And another one who's kind of photogenic is the Georgian prime minister, who's also very good looking. And the one who said, hey, I'm not going to be shoved out of power by Brussels. Another reviled figure. So, and then, of course, we had the elections in Germany, where the Alternative for Deutschland party, historic achievement. They got 21% of the vote, and flatly was declared that they would play no part at all in the government. None.
Yes, they are the lepers of German politics.
Exactly, the lepers of German politics. And the threat was made quite explicit that should they do better than 21%, reach to 25, 26, up to even 27, 28%, they just may be outlawed altogether as a
We have the tools.
We have the tools. We have the tools. And now it's the turn.
The whole purpose of this one.
Exactly. It's the turn of Marine Le Pen, who is the head of the National Rally Party, who, according to the polls, is very well placed to win the French presidential election in 2027. But lo and behold, she may well be prevented from running. What a surprise. I wasn't expecting that one.
Who would have? I didn't catch that one. Wow.
So here is an article from Politico. And of course, Politico likes these kinds of stories. And here we have the headline: top French court ruling paves way for Le Pen to be barred from presidential run. That's interesting. So therefore, the French.
The only thing I don't understand about that title is where's the smiley emoji at the end.
That's right. And it says the decision concerns an official from an overseas territory of Mayotte but has the potential to impact the far-right leader's embezzlement trial. So, notice
Lawfare. Oh,
that's right,
yeah.
exactly. The embezzlement trial. And every time you read these embezzlement trials, they're always so ridiculous. Oh, she put somebody on the payroll. Oh, it's outrageous. If somebody was
The
put on the
politicians
payroll,
ever
it shouldn't have been on the payroll.
never happened
Never
before.
happened. It says France's constitutional court ruled Friday that it is constitutional to remove an elected official from office as punishment for a crime before the individual has exhausted the appeals process. So, in other words, you can convict someone, and then once you've convicted that person, you can actually prevent that person from running for office. That's cute. So before the person has been able to appeal to a higher court and go through the whole appellate process, you could just prevent him from running for office. That's a very
Well,
cute idea.
they should have had one more sentence in that paragraph is that, yes, we can suspend due process when we
Exactly.
want to.
Exactly. While the case concerns a little known former local representative from the island of Mayotte in the Indian Ocean, legal scholars have followed it closely, with some arguing the decision could impact the embezzlement trial of far right leader Marine Le Pen.
Who decided it was the embezzlement trial?
Exactly, embezzlement.
Well, I
Um,
mean, is this maybe this is a um, uh, administrative investigation? I mean, that sounds more
from what
appropriate.
from what I can gather, this is just simply the usual kind of payroll padding.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's right. I mean, it seems like every politician does that. And then you can always argue, well, I mean, whether should this person be on public funds or should be private funds or whatever. But it's really a very minor issue.
Well, I mean, if this was truly a penalty and the death penalty was attached to it, then we would have no politicians, which
No,
might not be a bad thing. Okay.
the Constitutional Court instead chose to limit the scope of its analysis to local officials and not weigh in on broader legal implications, which would have affected Le Pen's incredibly sensitive court case. However,
Well,
these legal scholars were on the ball and already they're quickly thinking about the implications for Le Pen.
well, I mean, why did they choose to limit the scope of its analysis to local? Why?
Well,
Because it wouldn't, because that's where the pay dirt is, or
I think they did it because probably that's all you can do. I mean, if it's I mean, I mean, I don't know, but obviously the fact that the legal scholars are saying, well, you can imply it, presumably, constitutional court, they just rule on a particular case. I mean, you just rule on this particular case. It's up to others then to say, okay, well, how about we extend this ruling to this case? So, I mean, they can't start talking about Marine Le Pen at that stage.
oh, I see. Oh, those. So this is a RICO case.
Yes, exactly. And then it says prosecutors in Le Pen's case had asked the three-judge panel to ban her from running for office for 5 years and immediately execute that part of the sentence, even if she were to appeal, as opposed to waiting until all appeals have been concluded. So that's good. That 5 years. So if the clock starts running, then bam, she's out. And if it goes into effect right away, she can't run in 2027.
So this is, I mean, this is political brought to you by U.S. AID. I mean, even in the words of political, this is patently political.
Yes,
I
of
mean,
course.
they're open about it.
That's right. That's right. Uh, Now, of course, they've been gunning for Le Pen now for many years. So I mean, they tried to.
There was the party campaign finances thing.
Yeah, that's right, and that's right. And then there was also she made comments about Muslims, and I thought that was, and she was prosecuted for her comments about Muslims. Some tweet that she sent out, and this again, that was a freedom of speech. I mean, she sent out a tweet. And I think the tweet that she sent out was just simply Muslims in Paris right in the middle of Paris, praying, with their faces to Mecca. I mean, that's all she did. She just sent this out. She was prosecuted for that.
Everyone, she is not holding office.
You're right.
She's not holding office.
You're right.
Okay.
Right.
I think it's fair to say that office holders are held to a different bar, which I think is kind of appropriate. Okay. But she's just a politician's politic,
Right.
something like that.
Yeah, no, that's right. But even so, I mean, the due process says, okay, well, I've been convicted. However, I'm entitled to due process. I go through the process of appeals. I mean, you could argue, hey, yes, if you've been convicted, you must immediately step down. But why should you? I mean, you've been, I mean, you've still got all kinds of appeals open to you.
Well, particularly if you can make the argument that this is politically motivated,
Right,
which
exactly.
seems obviously that it is.
That's right. Um, and then he says, if the court follows the recommendations, Le Pen could be barred from running in the presidential election scheduled for 2027. The judges should deliver a verdict in Le Pen's case Monday. That's tomorrow. Le Pen, along with 24 co-defendants and her party, the National Rally, were accused of embezzling funds from the European Parliament by hiring parliamentary assistants to work on party business instead of EU affairs. All have professed their innocence. This is the kind of thing that is just, how does anyone decide whether you're doing party business or you're doing EU business or whatever? This is it's such a contrived
Well,
case.
I mean, what I would contend that if you use the same standard to like the Green Party in the European Parliament,
Right,
would you
right.
see any kind of different behavior?
Well, exactly.
Probably not.
That's right, and then you'd have to say, is there something that others don't do? I am quite sure that in the European Parliament, these are very lavishly funded
Yep. That's
European.
why people want them.
That's right, exactly. All the politicians, they have quite some big staffs, and I'm sure that these staffs are doing party work. In half the time they're doing party work,
How do
half the
you
time they're doing EU work, whatever.
even a person of good faith? I mean, how would you? What do you mean it's for the party? I mean, it's all connected, isn't it? I mean, we're
Exactly.
a party in the parliament.
That's right.
Right. I mean, how do you make that distinction?
Right.
Maybe there is a distinction, but I've never heard of such a thing.
No, I know.
I mean, when you're a DA
Right.
in New York City and you're you're doing the Democratic Party's work.
Exactly. That's exactly right, and that you're doing that. I mean, it's hard to know how you can differentiate. It's. I mean, I think Alan Dershowitz talked about presidents. What is political work and what is government work. I mean, yeah, you're always doing political work in the sense that you're trying to promote your election prospects. You're thinking about your re-election. So you're not immediately thinking, well, what's good for the country? Well, you're also thinking about, hey, is this going to help me get re-elected? How do you distinguish
Yeah, because if you
between
get
these two?
re-elected, it's good for the country. Come on, everybody.
But this thing, they were doing party work. It's not like, they use these funds to buy themselves lavish apartments is somewhere. Okay, well, they're using public money to refurbish their homes. But this is just simply that all politicians do.
I mean, embezzling, European Parliament, European Union. Come on, everybody. The whole thing is a scam.
Of course it is. Of course it is. And then it says, and then another story, Political. Political is really going to town. Marine Le Pen's presidential hopes could die next week. They say, gleefully. Her party hasn't really planned for it. France's far-right powerhouse, the National Rally, has largely avoided discussing Le Pen's legal troubles. And a Monday could go down as one of the most important days in the history of the French far right. It's the moment judges could crush Marine Le Pen's dream of winning the presidency. one she has never been closer to realizing, according to opinion polls. Le Pen is on trial for having participated in a scheme to embezzle funds from the European Parliament, and if found guilty, could be barred for running for any public office for the next 5 years. So that's that's your Romania problem dealt with. You've got your Georgescu problem dealt with. And while the future may look bright for the national rally, Le Pen's party, there may be some bumps in the immediate road ahead. The party does not appear to have performed any detailed contingency planning for a possible future without her, even after the prosecution issued its sentencing recommendations in November. Questions have also been raised if party president Jordan Bardella is too green to take Le Pen's place as the National Rally's presidential candidate. So, yeah, I mean, probably. I mean, she's been around for many, many years.
Ages.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Learned politics.
I mean, you could mistaken her for a monument.
Exactly. Learned politics from her dad. Starting all the way back in the 1970s. So she knows how politics works. He's 29. He's already shown himself to be quite inexperienced. The defendants in the case, all of whom have denied wrongdoing, were accused of operating a system in which they illicitly siphoned money from the parliament earmarked for European parliamentary assistance and illicitly used those funds to pay for party employees who seldom or never dealt with affairs in Brussels or Strasbourg. And imagine sort of you going to all the trouble of prosecuting this. That this is your real imperative. The prosecution presented damning evidence that many of the assistants never worked for the jobs they were set to have.
That's what government payrolls are for.
Exactly. And then one of Le Pen's closest associates. We're waiting for the verdict, and depending on what it is, we'll adjust. If the sentence is immediately executed, that means political death. So we'll have to see what we do. While the 2027 election is still wide open, other front runners like former Prime Minister Edouard Philippe have already announced plans to run and have started campaign preparations. So this is really very cute. What goes on here in Europe? She's heading towards election victory. Finally, she's this is, I think, her fourth run. I think it's her fourth time she's going to run.
Something like that. Yeah, but George, if she were in polling in single digits, this wouldn't happen, right?
Of course not.
Of course not.
And so here we are. And then, this is a model, absolutely the model for how you deal with nationalist, populist leaders that Brussels really doesn't want. I mean, Brussels clearly they're losing the political game in Europe, and so the only way they can do it is playing lawfare. I mean, just as in Moldova, they knew Maya Sandu was going to lose. I mean, that was going to be an embarrassing humiliation. So you just outright steal the election. I mean, you just do it in plain sight. And now you got the big one with France. Giorgia Meloni, I think she was the one who Ursula von der Leyen said, we have the tools. And it turns out Giorgia Meloni has proved herself to be very pliable. So they don't need to use the tools to deal with her. So, but
where does democracy stand in all of this? I mean, this is how they base their legitimacy, but it's turning into a pattern, everyone. Right. It's turning into a pattern. Yeah. And okay, for many people, even in Europe, Romania, well, that's kind of close to Asia, maybe next to Russia or something like that. Yeah. Then it's Germany, then the center of Europe, and now one of the most sophisticated, right-leaning conservative populist parties and individuals are being targeted. So it is a pattern. Okay, it's not a one-off. Who cares what happens in Moldova? Okay, you can take that position. A lot of people do. All right, We don't.
Right.
We care very much about that place
Yes.
because it's a template. It's
Yes.
it's a precursor of where is we try. We've said this repeatedly.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. They did that in Georgia. The Georgians didn't vote the way Brussels demanded. Brussels responded by sanctions. That's it. You just sanction everybody in Georgia. For what?
Sanction everyone and let God figure it out.
That's right. That's right. Because you voted the wrong way. Now, the woman we were talking about, the governor of Gagauzia, she's under sanction. She's under sanction by Brussels, and she's under sanction by Washington for the sin of upsetting the integrity of Moldova. Apparently, that's the integrity of Moldova is such a vital interest of Washington and Brussels that if you don't support it, you get punished. You get hit with sanctions. So she's under arrest and she's under sanction, which is very, very nice.
Yeah, because she thinks differently, will vote differently, and she's been genuinely popular. Okay,
right.
And so what you do, you use administrative means. Okay, right. The administrative state.
That's right.
They will take issues into their own hands. Okay, if democracy doesn't work, well, we have the tools to work around it. Okay, that's pure cynicism. Okay, and doing it in France, be careful what you wish for. Right. Because it's obvious. I mean, Marine Le Pen, in my personal opinion, I've said this to George many times, I think she should have retired. I think she should have built up a cadre behind her. I mean, and she has a legacy. She built a, I mean, her father was the origin, but the heavy lifting, she did it. I give her credit for that. I give her credit for it. But I as a brand, I just don't think it works. And I think she's had time. This Bardello guy, I mean, he's, charismatic, but he's 29.
He's 29. And yeah,
I mean, I'm all for sporting young people, but I mean, that's too young, in my opinion.
I think so too. Yeah, I think so too. And then you also have to remember what else goes on in Europe. You've got Milorad Dodik, the president of the Republika Srpska in Bosnia and Herzegovina. He's perpetually under sanction, but there's an arrest warrant out for him. Again, what's his sin? Well, his sin is that he refuses to accept the rulings of an arbitrarily appointed office of the High Representative who hasn't been elected to anything, but who apparently has seniority over elected leaders. And he said, well, you're not going to tell me what to do. So now there's an arrest warrant out for him.
Yeah, it's really weird that, he's an Austrian, right? The viceroy.
Well, what is, I think it's a German. The one.
Okay, German, Austrian, whatever. Okay. And they're calling the shots in the Balkans. Last time they they didn't work out well.
It's a sore point. It's two world wars. They had bad experiences from Austrians and Germans in World War I and Austrians and Germans in World War II. So it's not a good look to get orders from Berlin.
Yeah, they should one day just get some kind of blondie from Estonia, okay, or something like that. Okay. Anyway, George and I always like to introduce levity into our podcast here, but this is just not funny anymore. Okay, we point out the ironies and the hypocrisies and on all of that, but I mean, this is just taking a sledgehammer. I've said repeatedly on this podcast, we have a shrinking middle class. We have a middle class that's been under besieged for 40 years. And the only thing that they've been left with is the franchise. And now they're taking, a sledgehammer to it. Right. You get nothing. You will do what you're told. That's what they're telling us.
It is. And it's very, very interesting that in country after country, people are just voting the wrong way. And I think, and you get punished for voting the wrong way. I mean, that was it. I mean, it really is a case of that, the famous Bertolt Brecht poem, it's now time to dissolve the people and elect another. So that's right. Well, they're voting the wrong way. Well, they need to be punished. and you punish them. You send their leaders to prison. You had them. You were under arrest. You launch investigations because Ursula von der Leyen and the rest of them, they get to call the shots. And Ursula von der Leyen, who's everywhere, whenever there's anything, any conference at all, she's always there. She hasn't been elected to anything. I mean, she was a complete failure as a politician in Germany, failed at everything. And now she sort of strides around, is a commanding figure, ordering people to do this and that, much like the Estonian former Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas, who had to leave that job because of a scandal, condemning Russia every 30 seconds while making a ton of money through her husband's connections to Russia. And now she's again ordering people to do this, that, and the other. She's the former prime minister of a country, the size of a small American city. So this is the deep anti-democratic ethos of Europe.
Yes, and it's all justified because Russia is about to invade.
That's right.
It's going to have lunch tomorrow in Paris.
Right.
All right, we should call it the Democracy Deficit Chronicle, because that's exactly what it is. It gets narrower and narrower and narrower. Okay,
that's right.
And they don't even make a pretense to it anymore.
No.
Okay? We have the tools. We're going to use them.
That's right.
That's it.
That's it. Exactly.
All right, everybody. This is part of our Sunday wrap. This is The Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on Local, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. This is Sunday, as I said. Hopefully, with an act of God, we will have a podcast tomorrow,
Yep.
10 o'clock Eastern time.
Right.
And then George goes solo on Tuesday.
Exactly. And the most important thing that needs to be remembered is the dogs. Because the dogs, they say, well, they're doing all the heavy lifting. They do all the work, and then they feel that there's that they're not getting the adequate rewards. They keep checking the tip jar and say, this isn't good enough. So in order to get them a little bit into a better mood, please, any coins, paper, crypto, whatever, shove it into the tip jar. You gotta keep them on an even keel. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate,
the
more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve in the technology. And above all, we won't get these sinister, menacing appearances out of nowhere. So remember, if you like The Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye-bye.